This is about the tendency of racists in the UK to ally with racists abroad.
The biggest threat to our young girl is gangs, actually is statistically false anyway, let alone whether it's Pakistanis or not.
Separate the ethnicities out. That's what this is all about. They're using an issue which is an overinflated false narrative to create a story which buys into the Hollywood brainwashing we've had of the brown man. The black man are savages. They're coming for your girls, they're coming for your young women, and they're going to destroy your society.
Everything you've heard about the UK grooming gangs scandal is false. Elon Musk, Tommy Robinson, and all the other right-wing figures are completely wrong, and we're going to prove it. Brother Tahir, why don't you tell us what the real evidence shows about this issue?
So this is a great document, group-based offending publication, November 2024, and the results really speak for themselves. So when we look at the ethnicity data on individuals who are perpetrating what's known as SOCAD in this particular document, it's very straightforward. It's the self-defined ethnicity of suspects is 7% Asian, 83% white, 5% black, 3% mixed, and 2% other, with 83% white. So in this particular instance, in actual fact, the best data, which is the most recent, this is 2023 data from 1st of January 2023 to 31st of December 2023.
So roughly, they're all kind of roughly proportional.
No. We should make a big point about this. The white population is overrepresented by 1%, and we should create a firestorm over this as to, what is it in white culture that is actually generating this kind of overrepresentation of child sexual exploitation. I mean, that's what Elon Musk tries to say about Islam and about Muslim men.
Yeah.
So, the fact of the matter is, he's a white chap from South Africa. Maybe actually he's got tendencies in his culture that actually predispose him to a 1% higher risk of child sexual exploitation.
Yeah. I mean, that'll be the same, line of reasoning that they're using to accuse Pakistanis and Muslims of somehow being, intrinsically underdeveloped and perverse. That's essentially the idea, right?
That's correct.
And this is in the context of an ongoing genocide against Muslims, and by some estimates, 5 to 6 million Muslims having been killed over the last 30 years by either wars directly in Muslim countries or sanctions against Muslims, right?
Yeah, and this is exactly what it's about, really. This is all basically, people might think that these things are unconnected, but they're not. This is aimed at Western audience consumption so as to create a political narrative which in the minds of the ordinary public means that they don't really care about Muslim lives.
Dehumanize it.
That dehumanizes them so that it can facilitate and lubricate the engines of war and the engines of war manufacture and the killing of children abroad who are Muslim in Middle Eastern countries, as is currently happening in Gaza to this very day.
Yeah. And Elon Musk has, been fairly vocal about support for Israel. And Tommy Robinson as well has been not just vocal, but, funded to the hilt by Zionist entities in America.
Well, you can find videos of him online directly saying that if there was a war tomorrow, he would be fighting on the front lines for Israel.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't we go a bit deeper into some of these issues? We're going to first cover, a bit of this data a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about the evolution of this whole issue.
Yeah.
And then we're going to explore a little bit more about Tommy Robinson's links to Israel and Zionist entities towards the end. So why don't you take us away with this report? Because I think this is really important. Who did it? And give us a bit more detail about what it says. Because we want people to leave this video, and you're going to have to keep watching until the end. Take it all in. We're going to just jam-pack it with as much information as we can from the original data and
as quickly as we can, because we need to get this information out there at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So this is a very important report. This is from, I'm going to go straight to the top back again. So if you can come to my screen again, just so you can see all of the different task forces, the Child Sexual Exploitation Task Force, National Police Chiefs Council, and something known as the Hydrant Program. And, the lead on this is this particular police officer. So this is ACC Becky Riggs.
Famous Pakistani.
Famous Pakistani. No, she's not. She's Caucasian lady. She's headed a fantastic document. And I have to say that I think it's astonishing that this is freely accessible. Amazing document, great data, beautifully visually presented. And you have all of these, numpties online talking as if they have no clue.
There needs to be an investigation. There might be a cover-up, I don't know.
What we're going to show today is that the best available data shows that when the police find a grooming gang of white individuals, their ethnicity isn't flagged to them in their mind. They don't flag it that, oh, these are white guys, we better record their ethnicity. Because it's not seen as out of the ordinary, because the majority of the population of the UK are white.
Yeah.
When they do, the time it does flag is when there are Asian grooming gang.
Yeah.
Right? So actually, it's not that Asians are underreported. It's actually the best estimate is actually they're being overreported. We're going to go to data which directly
people will
shows
say,
that.
Well, no, but even if the police officers are reporting this stuff, it's being suppressed by higher ups. I mean, is there any evidence that that's the case?
Certainly, there's evidence that there were statements made by, for example, Rochdale Council that they were concerned about how it would stoke racial tensions. But that does not mean that fed into poor ethnic reporting data for 46 police, I don't know if the word is police forces across the UK.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that because Rochdale Council, some individual said that he was concerned about ethnic tensions in the area, that therefore all 46 police forces across the UK decided to not record their ethnicity data correctly?
And actually, we have loads of ethnicity data anyway, right?
Yeah, so let's go through this actually. Yeah. So this is the Hydrant program. So this document was produced in response to, so we have to look at the timeline a little bit here.
Yeah.
So if we're going to go through the timeline, let's start from the beginning. I'm going to give you a really quick rundown.
Do we not want to talk a little bit more about the Hydrant first or not?
No, I want to particularly focus on the timeline, explain how Hydrant came about.
Yeah,
and then we'll go through, well, what's the data show? 2013, early investigations into Rotherham. Alexis J. OBE was commissioned to investigate child sexual exploitation. 2014, Alexis J's report on Rotherham.
The J report.
The J report, we'll call it, okay, and highlighted institutional failures by the council and police, and found that most perpetrators in the Rotherham case were of Pakistani descent, but emphasized that systemic failings as the primary issue. 2015, Louise Casey's inspection of the Rotherham Manchester Council, I think it was. And then 2015, National Crime Agency investigation began investigating historical child sexual exploitations cases into Rotherham. Ongoing investigation, 70 million so far spent. This is 2015. They're asking for independent investigations. An ongoing investigation, 70 million has been put into it. Yeah. Okay. And then
it's not independent unless it's run by the EDL.
Yes, of course, absolutely, or by Elon Musk and his mates in South Africa.
Yeah.
So 2015, independent inquiry into child sexual abuse, the IICSA, was launched. And this in particular is the big one. Okay, this is the big one. Statutory inquiry, which means it can compel people to come forward. Established to investigate institutional failings in protecting children from sexual abuse across England and Wales. Alexis J, who was used in 2013, if you recall, became the chair in 2016. They produced an interim report in 2018. They produced a final report in 2022. And let me read to you a little bit about what she specifically said. As we can see in this particular document, this is page 44 of a 193-page report. She says quite clearly, she says, the failure to collect data on the ethnicity of the perpetrators and victims of child sexual exploitation, and the failure to make a public statement of the reasons why it is important to collect such data, have led to a one-sided and often uninformed public debate where links have been made between ethnicity and a number of high-profile cases involving South Asian men. Allowing this debate to continue without providing a proper context allows an accusatory style of debate in the public domain, which is both unhelpful and divisive. So she goes on to explain that there may have been a misplaced sense of political correctness, or it may be that there's the sheer complexity of the problem has inhibited good data collection. Now, I'm going to go go back in time to ask this question. Well, is it the case that Asians were underreported in the data?
Yeah.
So let's have a look at this. This is the Research Archive 2012 Children's Commission on Child Sexual Exploitation. This is one of the earliest publications, 2012, and is a major one.
Yeah.
And this is these people, they went through a large amount of data. This is the Inquiry into Child Sexual Exploitation in Gangs and Group. This is the interim report. And this is on page 107, specifically in the section on ethnicity of perpetrators. And the thing I want to highlight is this. It states here, as with the victim data, while white individuals form the largest group of perpetrators in both gangs and groups, BME individuals, particularly those loosely classified as Asian, are the second largest category of perpetrators reported via the call for evidence. Within the wider evidence base, it is evident that data are more proactively gathered on men and boys of Pakistani and Kurdish origin. So this is just, I want to give you a small taste of how bad this early data was. And this is this kind of early data that was used as the basis for the Quillen report, which then said that 80% of grooming gangs are Pakistani men, which then made it unhesitatingly, uncritically into every aspect of the media. So this is a small example of the kind of poor quality data. I don't think it's even fair to call it incomplete. You could better call it completely and utterly garbage. Okay. What do the authors write? They state that given that only 3% of the call for evidence submissions could provide full perpetrator data, and that 68% of submissions did not provide any perpetrator data, the chart below must be viewed with caution as the picture is incomplete. And the chart below shows that Asians are 22%. Okay, and that's from 2012.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. So one of the
Well, hold on. Let's dwell on that for a second. That's 3%. 3% of the data.
Yeah.
So you have a whole data set of 100%. Only 3% gave ethnicity data. And of that 3%, 22% were Asian of gangs.
Yes.
Is that of gangs or general?
It's groups.
Oh, okay,
Groups and gangs.
Yeah, which and gangs is only a very small part of overall sexual offences within the UK, right?
That's absolutely correct. And that's what I want to show from the Hydrant data. So I'm trying to build up a case.
Yeah.
So in 2012, we have this terrible trash data. Okay,
Yeah.
it's going to call it trash data.
Yeah.
And the reason is because police forces didn't consider it that important to record ethnicity, but they did when it was Asians.
Yeah.
To a larger extent, at least, than when it was white. Because if they were white, they were just white individuals.
There may have been a reporting bias. It may have been more memorable if it was an Asian.
Agreed. The 2022 report by Professor K made a number of recommendations. And this group, the Hydrant program, then kind of refashioned itself, redirected itself, and focused on these child sexual exploitation crimes. And specifically looking at what's known as SOCAD, so it's contact-based. So this is where you actually have, it's not just online stuff. It's contact, so child exploitation, which is physical. And what did they look at and what did they show? So this is a table which shows in 2023 group-based offending, so that's a group of guys, right? Group of individuals, can be women as well. Group-based offending across all criteria accounted for 3.7% of total child sexual exploitation crimes, abuse and exploitation.
Of all contact crimes.
Of all contact crimes, that's correct. No, of all CSAE crimes, crimes, it's 3.7%, and 5.4% of all contact crimes. And this table here, this graph here, I should say, shows you that picture. So this is overall crime totals. So dark blue here, as you can see on the screen, is all CSAE crimes. Light blue here is all contact crimes. And then red here is all group-based contact crimes. So we're looking at around 4,000 cases out of a total of approximately 80,000 contact crimes and more than 100,000 child sexual exploitation crimes. So this idea that, let's say for argument's sake, all of those group-based contact crimes are Pakistani men. Let's say all of them. Right. You're looking at 5.4% of crimes.
Of contact pedophilia.
Of contact pedophilia. Right? So this idea that, we just got to be, complete.
This is overtaking the UK and that this is, the biggest threat to our young girls.
Yes.
Is gangs actually just statistically false anyway. Let alone whether it's Pakistanis or not. Right? Because it sounds like the overwhelming majority of child sexual abuse is individuals committing these kind of things.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
And then of the grooming of the gangs, then they're only.
Well, now we're going to look at that. Now we're going to look.
How much are they? Is it true that all the white people are just doing it? I don't know, individually, and it's all just Pakistanis working in gangs? Is that what the picture shows?
No, it's not. So when you go to the ethnicity, we started with it, but we should come back to it, and it's worth coming back to it. So of those suspects with a recorded self-defined ethnicity, 83% were white. They do highlight that it's important to note that ethnicity data is limited and should be treated with caution. In 2023, only 34% of suspects had a recorded self-defined ethnicity. And of victims, this was 47%. So somebody may make the accusation, well, this 83% white and 7% Asian is of 34% of the total data set, right? And they didn't have ethnicity data for, 64% of the data set. And that's true. But given that this is 44 police forces across the country reporting on a quarterly basis, right, to this particular report, what you would have to allege, therefore, for that 7% and that 83% to be wrong, is that there's some form of absolutely systemic bias across all 46 police forces, all deliberately underreporting Asian men by a factor of what? How does 77% get to 80%, which is what we heard in the mid-2010s, 2010 to 2015? It was that 80% of grooming gangs and grooming groups.
7% to 80%.
How do you get from 70% to 80%?
10, 11, 12.
How do you get that?
Yeah.
Right? So you'd have to argue that there's some form of systemic bias whereby white police officers are overwhelmingly white police officers, working class, are overwhelmingly deciding not to report ethnicity data only on Pakistani men.
Yeah.
I mean, to believe that you need a brain transplant, okay, if you believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's clearly nonsense.
But is there any
given that in 2012 we found actually data was telling us that actually Pakistani men were being overrepresented.
This is a key point.
In the data collection.
Yeah.
Because when the white working class men were recording, police officers were recording that this is a white perpetrator, their ethnicity doesn't strike them because it's a white country.
Yeah.
Right? But when it's an Asian grooming gang, then that struck them more.
Okay, so let me just break this down. So what you're saying is that what data we do have on reporting biases is that probably Asian people are over-reported, right? And when you have actual systemic collection of data from around the country, specifically looking at this issue
on a quarterly basis,
you find that in terms of gangs, Pakistanis are what?
It's not gangs, this is group. Okay, so groups can be a variety of things.
So groups, but what are Pakistanis overrepresented in proportion to the
It's not even Pakistani,
population?
it's 7% Asian.
Right.
It's going to be 7%. There's going to be Indian in there. There's going to be Central Asian in there. There's going to be Pakistani in there. There's going to be Bangladeshi in there.
Yeah.
There's going to be Arab in there.
Yeah.
There's going to be North African in there.
Is there? Is that how they've collected?
Well, they don't have it. They have white, Asian, black, mixed, other.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't be
at least in the South Indians, it will be Asian,
yeah,
right?
fine.
Yeah.
They might not have North Africans, but I wouldn't put it past some police officers to go, all right, he's a brown chap. I mean, he looks Pakistani to me.
Yeah.
Put him in. I mean, it's well known.
At airports.
Yeah. We will be at airports, right? Not maliciously, but that's just how the reality is. So maybe they would have put North Africans in other.
Yeah.
But even in the Asian group, I mean, it's not even clear whether they would be Chinese.
Yeah.
Whether they put Chinese, maybe they put them in other.
And just remind me of gangs or groups rather. What was the percentage recently then in this data collection, in the systemic data collection?
So in this systemic data collection, 34% had ethnicity reporting of suspects.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then of them, what was the breakdown?
Of them, 7% were Asian, 83% were white.
How many Asians are in the UK? What's the population demographic?
8%.
8%. Okay.
Right.
And how many were white? 83%?
83%, which is 1% higher than the population of... there you go.
No.
They got to look into their culture. They got to find out what is it in their culture that predisposes them to child sexual exploitation.
Okay, and then
let me be absolutely clear. I'm being tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't believe that there is anything in white culture that predisposes
criminality is criminality.
Criminality is criminality.
It's universal. These things are universal.
Absolutely. Well, I think that this is a really good point you've made. It's universal because we've just had the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury. Okay.
Yeah.
What did he resign over? Is he Pakistani?
Yeah.
Is he actually from Lahore?
Yeah.
Maybe he's just a really fair-skinned North Indian.
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows? He resigned because he presided over, right, child sexual exploitation, right, which he failed to take necessary action on, according to the media and according to large.
Was Epstein Pakistani? Can you remember?
I don't think Epstein was famously Pakistani either. The point is that you have these
Maxwell.
Well, you have these abuse cases, and this is where I'm going to get to the heart of it. This is where we're going to get to the meat of it, which you're not going to hear this anywhere else. This is why you'll stick around with rational religion. You got me?
As we aggressively prod fingers in their direction.
Yes, is that you have abuse cases among football managers, among football coaches of school footballing, youth football clubs,
athletics as well, famously, right? Gymnastics.
Yeah, Larry Nassar.
Yeah.
Right, massive abuser.
Yeah.
Okay. You have abuse in the church, typically, historically.
Mm-hmm.
There's even been abuse cases in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there's been abuse cases in the media as well, in Hollywood. You had the whole Me Too movement.
Yeah.
You know, what does all, and now you've had abuse cases.
Who's that guy?
Weinstein. Weinstein.
Yeah.
Weinstein?
Harvey Weinstein, yeah.
Harvey Weinstein, yeah. So now you've got cases in what is effectively, who are these Pakistani men? Let's say that they're overrepresented. Let's admit the argument. Which
is false.
No, it is false.
Yeah.
But let's just process.
Yeah.
Okay. What are they doing? Who are they? What are they doing? The reality is in the UK, especially in these northern towns, Pakistanis, Muslim men, they are overrepresented in a specific occupation. That's taxi driving, late night taxi driving, and late night delivery. Right? Taxi and delivery.
Basically poor. They're poorer than others.
They're poorer than others. They're in poor communities, and they're doing the kind of the services in terms of taxi work,
gig economy stuff,
delivery worker stuff. Right. So when you have that environment where they're operating at night often without accountability, then you get the formation of criminality. And that's the same in the church. When in the church you had white guys from public schools, okay, and they were outside the view and the purview and the eye of accountability, they committed crimes against boys. Not only in one country, internationally. Internationally, right? When you had it among football managers or athletics gymnast coaches, you again had similar behavior, because the issue is not of ethnicity. The issue is when you do not have a system or a belief system of accountability, that you are accountable for your crimes, right? Then that is where criminality flourishes, right? So it's actually an aspect of human nature. It's not an aspect of a particular ethnicity in particular.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like religion promotes this stuff. Religion's completely against this, right?
Yeah.
And if you have a true belief in God, if you have a true belief that you will be accountable for your actions, then that will stop you from this. You know, I'm sure some of these people will claim that they're Muslim and they're free to claim that, but ultimately their actions betray that they don't have any real belief in accountability, because Islam does not look favorably upon people who do this kind of stuff. The punishments are quite harsh.
The punishments are a good deal harsher than they are in English legislation.
Absolutely. So, I mean, these real accountability will stop you from this. And if you want to argue that there's any belief system which could promote this, the only one you could say is atheism, because it takes away a sense of accountability. You don't have any real accountability. Now, that's not to say that atheists, are all, doing this kind of stuff. Obviously not. But this isn't an argument against religion. Do you remember what David Belinsky, what did he famously say on this issue?
He said, yes, he said, I used to love quoting this. So he used to say that, if a grandma is walking down the road with a cane, it will not aid her in walking across the road by kicking the cane away.
Yeah.
So if people with a belief system that God is watching them, they still commit these crimes because they don't fully subscribe to the belief system, or they don't fully give themselves over to all the implications of the belief system and internalize the belief system, then getting rid of that belief system of accountability isn't going to aid them in behaving more morally.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not an issue of religion. It's not an issue of ethnicity. This is an issue of human nature, criminality, and policing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, to the credit of the British institutions, has actually been dealt with, pretty well, at least in the response to all of this. They have done report after report.
I fully agree. And this is the kind of thing that actually makes me somewhat, pretty proud to be British, actually.
It's kind of rare these days, to be honest.
It's very rare these days. But to attack the British government over a failure of reports. I mean, did you see how many reports I read out?
Yeah.
Okay. When they was
quite detailed data gathering.
The data gathering is excellent. I mean, I can't imagine that there are many countries where you have full ethnicity data on all perpetrators of child sexual exploitation, because a lot of these crimes, they fit into different categories of offenses. They don't all come pre-packaged as, here you go, here's a child sexual exploitation crime.
Yeah.
Okay? It doesn't work like that. Some of them are recorded as sexual exploitation, some are recorded as sexual assault, some are recorded as even potential things like kidnapping and things. They're recorded in different
coding issues.
They're coding issues across different.
But it sounds like they're trying to standardize that now.
But they're trying to standardize it. But the point I want to make is that you had a report which was commissioned by Professor Alexis Jay, led by Professor Alexis Jay, commissioned by the government, completed in 2022. The recommendations were implemented. The Hydra report is out from 2024 February. It provides detailed statistics on at least a third of the ethnicity data across almost all police forces in the UK. And it completely and utterly debunks Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage and Piers Morgan and all of the thing. And the reason it debunks it in particularly strongly, I want to emphasize, is that it shows that Asians are underrepresented by 1%, and the white population is overrepresented by 1%.
What I don't really understand is, I mean, is it Quilliam that kind of came up with this stat in the first place, or was it from these different like early incomplete reports, or with early reports with incomplete data? Where did the myth really spread from?
So I think that that's exactly right. I think you basically had early attempts at looking at the state of play.
Yeah.
Right. So when these reports of Rochdale came out, Rotherham came out.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the question was, well, what does the evidence say about ethnicity data? Is this reflected in the data, or are these isolated incidents?
Yeah.
When they went to the data, they found that it was not just incomplete. To call 68% of submissions did not have any perpetrator data in 2012.
Yeah.
To call that incomplete is an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
So they found that Asians were overrepresented in this trash data, and they make it absolutely clear in their reports. That enabled interested parties, Quilliam Foundation in particular.
Didn't some of these other reports use like media press releases and reporting in the news as part of their data collection?
Yes, they did, some of them. Well, because the data was not fully fleshed out. There wasn't great data anyway, so they were trying to grab whatever they could, I think. But Quilliam in particular, they chose, I think, 120 or 150 cases over many, many years, which when you consider there are 100,000 cases of child sexual exploitation per year, right? And up to 500,000 cases that go unprosecuted, to choose 120 to 150 over a 10-year period is an obscene and shocking misrepresentation of data. And it was that report that came out and said 80% of grooming gangs committing child sexual exploitation are Pakistani men.
Do you know if they had actually any basis for that, even within their own evidence? Because I've read that they haven't. Even within their own evidence, they didn't actually have. They promised that they would provide evidence for that, and it never happened.
That's also what I've read. That's what I've read. That's what I've read, that they promised that there would be evidence for that, and they never actually provided the evidence for that. I think that that's important. I think another aspect of this is why now? Why is it that suddenly Elon Musk has kind of gone mad about this?
Yeah. Can we talk about Tommy Robinson a bit first? Because he's kind of the center of a lot of this. The EDL were the ones who have been capitalizing on this for the last decade or so, trying to claim that there is this, tsunami of sexual abuse by Pakistanis against, white girls, right? It's actually a classic paradigm of racism.
Yeah, it is.
That the
barbarian,
the blacks are coming for your pure white children.
I know,
right? That's always been a trope for over 100 years.
Yeah, and he revealed himself. So he did an interview with Jeremy Paxman, which I watched, and it was a really funny moment where Tommy Robinson, he's like, look,
Stephen Yaxley Lennon.
Stephen Yaxley Lennon is his actual name, not of Tommy Robinson. Because if any working class guy knew that this guy has a double-barreled surname, they might think, oh, well, maybe he isn't as working class as I am.
Yeah.
But so Tommy Robinson, Stephen Yaxley Lennon, he's talking to Paxman. He says to Paxman, look, you don't know. I can't do a great accent, but he goes, you don't know that. You don't know any girls in where I'm from, Luton.
Yeah.
Who have been plied with heroin by Muslim men, right? Muslim men, right? And then in the next breath, he says what? He says, you don't know any beautiful, beautiful young women who've decided to wear the burqa and become married to a Muslim man. It's like, whoa, they're not the same thing, buddy. But that's basic in his mind. Yeah. They are the same
Free association.
thing. He's just got...
You let the patient talk and they'll tell you all their links. That's what you do in psychiatry.
So that's exactly... he actually equates the two in his mind. A woman becoming a Muslim and wearing the burqa and being married to a Muslim man is his actual fear.
Yeah.
Is his actual fear. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is an excuse to try and drive a wedge between Muslim communities and the indigenous population of this country.
Yeah.
So as to try and demonize Muslims and to try and separate the ethnicities out.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what this is all about.
Yeah.
Okay. They're using an issue which is an overinflated false narrative to create a story which buys into the Hollywood brainwashing we've had of the brown man or the black man, the brown man are savages. Yeah. They're coming for your girls. They're coming for your young women, right? And they're going to destroy your society. And this is what Elon Musk goes on and on and on about. They're going to replace you. Yeah. Well, hold on a second. You're from South Africa, mate. Last I checked, I think it was the European Dutch who went down there and replaced the blacks there. Yeah. Right? And what did they do in North America? Did they love the American the Native Americans to death? I mean, what happened
there?
That
wasn't a great replacement theory. That was just a great replacement.
Yeah.
They completed it.
Yeah, Canada, Americas, Australasia. And this is what I particularly love. This attack on Islam, that Islam comes and it conquers through replacement. Well, hold on a second. Let's look at all of the nations that Islam has spread. North Africa. Are North Africans still North Africans? Are Berbers in Morocco still Berbers, or are they Arabs? In the kind of Hijazi Arabs? No, they're Berbers. Indonesians, are they Arabs? No, they're Indonesians. Malaysians, are they still Malaysians or are they Arabs? No, they're still Malaysians.
What about the Chinese?
What about
the
the
20 million
Chinese?
Chinese Muslims? Are they all Arabs?
Are they all Arabs? No, they're Chinese. What about the Indo-Pakistani subcontinent, South Asian subcontinent? Are they all Arabs? No, they're actually still Asian. And in fact, Islam ruled India for several hundred years and they still maintained majority Hindu population. So actually everywhere Islam went, the indigenous populations were not wiped out.
Yeah.
The indigenous populations continue to be in the majority today.
Yeah.
But everywhere Christianity went, guess what?
You got,
Boom.
Yeah, you got white Christians everywhere.
You got white Christians everywhere. They became the replacement. This is pure projection.
Yeah.
This is just pure and utter projection. This is what they do whenever they go anywhere. And now they're accusing Muslims of doing it because we're 8% of the population.
And this is in the context of, as I said, millions of Muslims have been killed through war and through sanctions over the last 30 years. Like, Muslims are the global victim. There's been actually, if you're looking for a global victim or a victim class, there's none other than actually the Muslims who are leading that list in terms of people who have been killed by wars and by aggressive economic sanctions. The Muslims have been the victims of the wasps of essentially the Anglo-American Europeans, that kind of whole block, right? And it's been enabled by racism against Muslims, which is exactly what this narrative has. And if you look at, who, like you said, what Tommy Robinson is essentially this common village racist, okay, who started the English and Jewish Defense League, as it was originally called.
Yeah, it was originally called. We've got the documents actually right in front of us from Company's House. Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
and I think that this is not to tar the Jewish community in any way, shape, or form, because I imagine there's plenty of Jewish people who absolutely loathe Tommy Robinson as an outright racist. Yeah, but it's to show what is continually happening, especially in the US, with this kind of talk of Judeo-Christian values. Yeah, right. Judeo-Christian values. Let's talk a little bit about that. Those Christians who you associate in that little term, Judeo-Christian values, they spent the last millennium butchering you.
Yeah, and the Jews found solace and refuge in the Muslim world.
That's correct.
For the last 1,000 years.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct.
They resurrected Hebrew. They resurrected their entire Jewish culture in Andalusian Spain and then in Baghdad. The Jews have found comfort with the Muslims, not the other way around. But you had in the last century, obviously, the establishment of Israel and the demonization of the Palestinian communities and the progressive murder and butchering, which has come to a head since 1948, at least, in the current situation, right? So this is why I emphasize English and Jewish Defense League, because there has been an entire lobby of Zionists who are seeking to demonize Muslims. Okay?
Yeah. This guy, he doesn't seem able to actually to organize much. So which also makes me more suspicious of his behavior. I mean, he's a well-known drug addict. There's plenty of videos you can find online of him talking about how he's scored in every country that he's ever been to.
While clearly high, he's assaultative. He's been jailed for assaults, and you can see you've seen the videos of him just like
assaulting people.
Assaulting people. It's awful.
So this was the certificate of incorporation of a private limited company in 2011, 22nd of June, and it was incorporated. Obviously, by somebody who knows nothing about how to incorporate companies. Miss Elizabeth Gale was the person who incorporated it. And this is a public record. I mean, we didn't get this. You go in Company's House, you can download this for yourself. Yeah. What I find particularly funny, I'll be honest with you, is that they incorporated it with 7 shares. I mean, you've got to know nothing about a company to incorporate it with 7 shares. But anyway, they incorporated it, and that was in June 2011. And then they had a change of name on July 2011. And when we go to the change of name on July 2011, what does it change to? So it's gone from the English Defence League, EDL Limited, to the English and Jewish Defence League Limited. Then what you have is you have a little bit of time passes. And then on June 2014, so 3 years in, it then changes its name back from the English and Jewish Defence League Limited to the English Defence League Limited. Now, the point I want to highlight here is that this is a total misrepresentation. This isn't about Judaism. Yeah. This isn't about being Jewish. It's not even about being Israeli. Yeah. In reality, this is about the tendency of racists in the UK to ally with other communities against Muslims. In particular, you have
racists abroad.
With racists abroad, and that's exactly what happens. You have, Zionist funders in the United States, neoconservative funders who get their money from Israel, and then they funnel that money into the EDL to try and utilize.
Or even if they're just Zionist Americans.
Or even Zionist Americans, exactly, because there's plenty of Christian Zionists as well, who then funnel it into these groups to help stir the pot.
Yeah.
So when they saw perhaps that Tommy Robinson was stirring up
opportunity,
was stirring up hatred against Muslims using this grooming gangs tactic, they pumped money into it.
Yeah, and they tar the Jewish community with that name. So they will use their own the name of a group that has been historically hugely victimized by Christians mainly.
By Christians.
Yeah, they use their name, their good name, as a shield. To essentially stir racist hatred. Can you go to the Times of Israel article?
I've got it up already. I've got it up already. So this is an article by the Times of Israel. Why are US pro-Israel
famous
groups...
Palestinian outlet.
Famous Palestinian outlet, pro-Palestinian outlet. Why are US pro-Israel groups boosting a far-right anti-Muslim UK extremist? And it goes on to explain that according to a recent investigation by The Guardian, Robinson is being bankrolled by a nexus of international organizations. Many of those groups, it turns out, are part of the American right-wing infrastructure supporting the Israeli cause. And I think it was over 100,000.
Can we zoom in a bit on that?
I have zoomed out. I have zoomed in here.
Great, thanks.
I think it was over 100,000. He had many legal costs, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which were bankrolled to the tune of over 100,000 by a lot of these.
Well, it says MEF's president confirmed to Times of Israel that his group has spent roughly $60,000 on 3 demonstrations defending Robinson's legal trial.
Yeah.
This is a lot of money.
Yeah, it is, exactly.
For British groups, at least.
Yeah, I know. Well, lobbyists always say that the English politicians are really cheap compared to the American ones.
Yeah.
Now you look at it, they get £3,000 and of expenses, and they're like, ooh, I better just vote exactly how this guy tells me. And in America, it's like 300,000.
Yeah, if not more. Yeah. And then if you go down a bit, it goes on, and there's if you just quote one of those paragraphs there. I think it's useful information for people. Yeah,
so this is an example. So Pipe said that he first met Robinson in December 2017, was impressed by him. Mm-hmm. He described Robinson as part of a group of people who are trying to sustain their civilization, trying to keep Europe, mm-hmm. and trying to keep the West, mm-hmm. right? Even as they encourage the migration of Europeans into Israel to take over the homes of Palestinians in the West Bank.
Yeah. Ethnic purity doesn't really apply there. Yeah,
no, absolutely not. So it goes on to say that both the MEF and Gatestone are funded by Nina Rosenwald, a self-described ardent Zionist and American Jewish philanthropist who co-chairs American Securities Management and who founded the Gatestone Institute.
Yeah. So I mean, this just goes to show the extent of this support for EDL and Tommy Robinson is pretty substantial, and the fact that you have Elon Musk, who has, supported Israel fairly vocally, at least in the last year or so, and has given voice to them. Went to Israel and had a lovey-dovey trip over in Israel.
Yeah, he discovered his innate Jewishness, wearing his kippah, the Wailing Wall, like they all do. They've got to go get the photo op, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that he's supporting them it indicates that, well, we don't know about Elon Musk specifically. Maybe this is kind of just who he is. Maybe he actually just believes in all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's that quote from his daughter, isn't there?
Yeah, there's an allegation from his child. I don't know if she's a trans girl.
I don't know if she's that one. I don't know if it's male to female or female to male. I can't remember.
But this individual says that when she was, I think, 6, that he said Arabic is the language of our enemy. That is a report. We don't know if we can rely on it.
Yeah.
But what we can say at the moment is he is going so strongly against Muslims and Pakistanis in the UK that it raises serious questions as to his intentions and to his beliefs.
Even as he's absolutely happy for Indians to flood the software jobs in the United States.
Why don't you tell us, because that is part of the context, the H-1B stuff.
It is, and that's exactly right. And that's part of the context. It's kind of like, oh, look over there. Look, there's a problem over there with Muslims. Don't forget the Muslims, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. So he basically got into a big kind of argument.
Do you know who's worse than Indians? Muslims. Let's think about them. That's basically what it is.
That's literally what he did. So, you have this issue with what's known as a H-1B visa in the United States, where you have a large number of software engineers coming into tech companies in Silicon Valley and other places from India, and they are being paid significantly lower wages than a software engineer from Harvard, Yale, or any United States university is getting. And as a result, you have a significant number of software engineers who are US born, US trained, US indebted, right?
Yes, yeah.
Not getting jobs.
Yeah.
And the reason is because their particular niche, their particular market is being somewhat flooded by individuals from abroad, specifically from India, on these H-1B visas. Now, Tesla depends on them heavily, as do other tech companies. And so Elon Musk is a big fan of the H-1B visa and wants to maintain it.
Was he defending it?
And he was defending it. He said that we need to maintain this H-1B visa in terms of for US companies. And that Vivek Ramaswamy,
Ramaswamy, I think.
Ramaswamy, he made a post about how actually it's the culture of the United States that's the problem at hand. And actually because the US guys just don't work hard enough, and actually the Indians work much harder, which is,
How did the MAGA crowd find that?
they didn't like it too much. They didn't, funnily enough, like the Indian-born or Indian heritage individual promoting Indian culture and putting down the US American culture, working culture. So
all the South African immigrant supporting the same.
Exactly. So, at the same time as they had that big bust up in the United States, basically the Rust Belt, the kind of grassroots supporters of Donald Trump against the elite supporters of Donald Trump, the tech billionaires, the billionaire bros, as they call them. Okay, when you have this kind of kerfuffle, one supporting Indian migration to take software jobs, and the other one saying, no, these jobs should be American jobs in America. Suddenly Elon Musk goes, but what about grooming of white girls in England by all these Pakistani Muslim men? Actually, we need to get rid of Keir Starmer and we need to have Tommy Robinson. And then he turns on Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
He turns on... He literally...
Almost feel sorry for him. I don't.
I mean, it's like a soap opera. It's actually like a soap opera. But what it shows you, I think, really, ultimately, at the end of the day, is that there's a kind of culture of you can always kick the Muslim when you're down.
Yeah.
Right? When you're under pressure, just kick the Muslim in the corner.
Yeah.
All right? And then, it'll all be all straightened out.
Yeah.
And this is all against the backdrop of kids being continually butchered in Gaza by Israel.
Yeah.
That's the substrata here. That's the basis of the conversation, actually. That let's demonize Muslims as unworthy to be compassionate towards because we're involved directly in arming, funding, killing their children in Gaza.
Let's exploit the horrific crimes on British young girls of different ethnicities. Obviously, many of them white, some of them not.
Yes.
Let's exploit their suffering.
Oh, and that's pretty interesting.
Demonize the Muslims.
Yeah.
So that we can kill their children abroad.
That's absolutely correct. And actually, one of the things that also emerges is that in some of the data, specifically in this data from 2012, is that actually ethnicity of victims is also underrepresented if they are from minority communities.
Okay. In terms of reported?
In terms of reporting, yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's these are tragic issues we're talking about, to be honest. And it's incredible how these people with megaphones, I mean, that's ultimately why Elon Musk bought Twitter, which is forever, unfortunately for him, what it will be known as. He bought Twitter so that he can have a massive voice, and he uses that massive voice. And unfortunately, it's either to promote brainless nonsense or this kind of stuff. Increasingly, he used to have some better takes at least, and now increasingly it's just kind of race baiting, unthinking, far right lunacy. Yeah, which is a shame. And with there's a great Stan Lee once wrote, with great power comes great responsibility. If you have a big voice, then you need to use it responsibly. Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're ultimately talking about things which have affected real victims in society, both within the UK and abroad. Yeah, I mean, one of the first times, not really one of the first, but one of the recent times that I particularly noticed his kind of unhinged takes was when there were riots in England. Yeah. And actually everything was fine here. Yeah. In all honesty, everything was fine. They were relatively contained. They were relatively contained. There was much bigger anti-fascist riots that occurred, which weren't reported on. The UK was not going to hell in a handbasket, as they say. Okay, yeah. And if you looked at his Twitter timeline, you'd think that literally the UK was plunging into civil war. Yeah. And in fact, I think you talked about the UK potentially plunging into civil war. I was like, what planet is this guy on? And does he just tweet? Yeah.
Does he just? I also thought to myself, how does he have so much time to tweet? I mean, he's running the Boring Company, Tesla, X, and
I think that's a testament to his management ability.
It probably is a testament
because he's probably got these things running by themselves so well that he doesn't need to.
That is probably
he's already
true.
invested 15 years of work into that. So
that's true.
I'm not doubting his industrial powers at the end of the day, but he needs to. I think look at the evidence on these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to look at the evidence because ultimately it actually just damages his credibility.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be known as a purveyor of sloppy misinformation and lies because you couldn't be bothered to, type it into Perplexity or ChatGPT or Google and do a bit of reading.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Laziness. That's what it all comes down to. Basic human failings in the end of the day.
I don't think, but it's motivated. It's motivated by well, I think you could say certainly for some of the individuals involved by racial hatred.
Racial hatred, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, brother, very much. And thank you at home. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do comment, give us a like and subscribe. We do a lot of these videos and I think you're going to really enjoy the rest of our content. Thank you very much.